I'm Fergal. I work for a company called Intercom. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming to the talk. Hopefully you get something useful out of it today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we at Intercom built Fin, which is a large language model, kind of GPT-4 powered product that we sort of shipped, generally available there in June. And I'm going to try and keep a good bit of time for Q&A at the end if I can. Because, these talks, there's just so much going on in AI at the moment. The world is moving so fast, and it's really hard to know what people are interested in and kind of where to meet the audience. So, can I just ask you, can you, try and calibrate, can I get a sense of, can you raise your hand if your sort of primary function is design or UX? Okay, so very, very kind of UX, very design crowd, and that's really good for me to know. Great. Can I ask you one more thing? Could you kind of raise your hand if you've heard of Intercom before? Okay, so we're fairly widely known. Okay, so I have a few slides at the start kind of explaining Intercom. I'll go through those pretty fast. So Intercom, started out to be kind of a customer communications platform, like one place you could go and kind of handle all your customer communications. And more recently, we're kind of really focusing on customer support and customer service. How can we get people to have great customer service on the internet? And Intercom is perhaps closely associated with this messenger, this thing that lives in the bottom right-hand corner of a screen, where you can go as an end user and you can kind of talk to a customer service team or a product team or whoever's responding to it. And Intercom has done a lot of work to make this messenger kind of customizable, and it's fairly widely deployed. But we spend a lot of time thinking about the kind of the experience of, the support agent, the support representative that kind of answers questions all day, every day. Kind of spend maybe about half our time in terms of AI and machine learning thinking about that. And then the other half our time thinking about bots in the messenger. And so that's a picture there of, the sort of the bot experience that you might have gotten in the Intercom messenger over the last few years. And this really today, what I want to talk about is the story of how we took our sort of previous generation bots, which did use machine learning, but they weren't as sophisticated and they weren't as advanced as this new bot we've built, Fin, is. So I want to talk a little bit about Fin. So Fin is this bot that, we built over the last kind of really from about February through June, and we're still working on it. So why am I talking about Fin specifically? What's different about it? This uses kind of modern AI, uses kind of GPT, and someone can come along and they can ask a question here, like the classic question we always use for testing is, how do I delete a tag? And, Fin will just go and look at the knowledge base and sort of like just answer the question from the knowledge base. And I guess what's really kind of impressive or interesting about this, as opposed to what we had before, was if you say, like, you see this follow-on question here, how do I add one instead? Well, it's smart enough to know that one there refers to like one tag, and then in the Intercom knowledge base, there is many different places you can add a tag, so it goes and looks across all the different help desk articles and synthesizes a new answer here. And so this is an example that I just made like 2 days ago when I was looking for an example for this. It just kind of works. Okay, so how did we do this? What changed in the world that made us want to build a product with this sort of next generation AI and to do it so quickly? And really, it's GPTs, and large language models, like ChatGPT. And we really feel this is kind of like an internet-sized technology change. This is like a huge leap forward in AI. It's going to change like all our products at some stage. And also, this tech has just changed how we build and how we use AI. So I kind of want to talk to you about that today. And I want to start off by talking a little bit about the technology, because this is sort of a technology-driven change that hopefully I'll be able to kind of introduce at a high level in terms of how we see it. And then I want to talk a little bit about the process that we use to actually build with this technology. And then hopefully open it up to questions and discover I have explained everything badly, but we'll do our best. So really, for us, there was 3 levels of kind of getting to grips with and dealing with this sort of new technology, which I'm just going to refer to as GPTs. You could call it large language models either. And like level 1 is like, oh my God, these things are incredible. And I'll give you an example of this. If I go to GPT-4 and I just say, hey, what's my biography? It knows this really quite detailed, specific information about me. But then you get to level 2, where you realize that a lot of the information that it knows about me is actually wrong. It's made up. It's plausible but incorrect. And you kind of get to like level 2 of your understanding, right? Which is like GPTs. They make things up and they aren't trustworthy. And I guess my thesis for this talk, and the reason why I think this is an interesting thing to think about, is that there is sort of, I would argue, a level 3, which is actually they can still be incredible when they're used right. But you've got to look at them in the right way. Okay, you've got to see them as like engineering components or design components. See them as building blocks. We've all looked at like maybe ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is a product. It uses the technology, but it's got certain design trade-offs. For Finn, we're trying to build a product that has different design trade-offs. And so like to do that, we kind of need to separate out some aspects of this technology that I think have been accidentally bundled together. So what do I mean by that? Well, I want to start off like, how should we think about GPTs? What does this even mean, right? These are big machine learning systems. And what they're setting out to do is something called token prediction, right? You know, they're just setting out to predict the next word or the next part of a word. What should come next? So you say to ChatGPT, the quick brown fox, it says jumps over the lazy dog, because it's been trained on a lot of text on the internet that has the sentence, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. You say, even like the start of a mathematical sequence of numbers, the Fibonacci sequence, and you know, it just predicts what's coming next. You know, it's kind of simple stuff, right? But where it gets interesting is, you say something like this, right? The smallest household item, too big to fit in a suitcase. That's kind of an unusual query. Maybe not be too many lists on the internet of smallest household items that are too big to fit in a suitcase. But it says, oh, it's a microwave, right? However, this could also vary depending on individual preferences and the size of the suitcase and so on. So there's something going on here that's not that easy to predict. There's some form of reasoning here over and above just token prediction. And so, like, you know, you see a machine learning intro to this, people will tell you, oh, this stuff's a sequence model, uses attention. And I can say, hey, that's not really a useful way to think about these things. That's like thinking about what's a human. Well, a human is genes and evolution. And you wait a long time and you get a human. And this is true, but it's not useful. So in the same way, that's not a useful way to think about humans and your users and what they do. Thinking about token prediction is not a useful way to think about these systems. So you should sort of distrust anything you read that says, oh, it can't do something because it's just trained to predict the next word. These are new systems. They're kind of they're different, and we're still learning exactly what they can and can't do. I think a better way of thinking about these systems is it's kind of like it's like a big database, and like it's a reasoning engine attached to the database. And really, the reasoning engine is key. Like what's new and different about this AI stuff is that it can do a bit of reasoning for you. Whereas in the past, if you wanted a piece of software that would do reasoning, it was really hard or almost impossible. And we focus a lot on the database. That kind of comes with ChatGPT if we use ChatGPT. And often the database is wrong. It's a liability. It's sort of this compressed representation of things. And so for Finn, and I think for a lot of products that you want to build, you want to use the reasoning part of this AI tech, but you want to try and get away from thinking about what facts it knows or doesn't know. And so again, the reasoning capability is quite sophisticated. There's, you know, a toy example here. A mouse wants to steal a piece of cheese. There's a cat in the room. There's a bed in the room. What should the mouse do? You just go to like ChatGPT or GPT-4, and it makes up a pretty good plan. If you haven't worked in machine learning, that may or may not be that impressive. This is really impressive. Machine learning systems, people struggled for like decades to get them to do anything vaguely like this, and they just didn't. And now, suddenly, it almost works out of the box across many different domains. You say, the cat's deaf, right? And it'll give you a new plan. What about the bell? Ignore the bell. The reason the cat is deaf, the bell sound won't alert it. A lot of general knowledge about the world. And even if this tech was to stay static where it is, I think we'll be figuring out how to use this reasoning and combine it with our software products for like years and years to come, decades to come. And again, maybe I'm spending some time on this because I think it's important to understand the limitations and the strengths of this new technology that we can design with and build with. And a lot of kind of talk was focusing on the fact that it hallucinates. But if you ask a human to answer a question, you get a history expert and you ask them a deep question about history, well, they may misremember something too. They may recall something badly or make something up that's plausible but wrong. If you give them a history book and then ask them a question and they can go look for it in the history book, they'll give you something more reasonable. And so really that's kind of how you want to use these, and that's how we use this. That's how we built this product, Fin. And there's limits to what you can put into them, but overall they're pretty good when you kind of work well with them. We're still learning how to do this. Another model, this may be a little technical, another model that we use to think about what tasks are these systems good at versus bad at is, are they interpolative or extrapolative? And you can kind of think about this in a mathematical way. Interpolation is when you're asking a model to do something that's kind of similar to situations it's seen before. And extrapolative is where you're asking it to hey, think about something very outside your experience. That they're really good at interpretative tasks. So you should favor tasks where you can give it examples or training data or ask it to do something it's probably seen on the internet and perform a task given a context. Can you raise your hand if you've heard of retrieval augmented generation? Okay, so that's much fewer people. So that's really the game you're in when you're trying to build good products from these things, right? You're trying to say to the system at sort of runtime, you're trying to say, hey, system, here's a bunch of context, and maybe context that I've pulled from my database, and now figure something out. So again, you don't want to be building systems that say something like, who was the president of America in 1900? Instead, you want to be building systems that say, hey, GPT, given this article about the history of US presidents, who was the president of America in 1900. Okay, so that's kind of background technology. Hopefully that's useful. I want to talk a little bit about Intercom's journey using this technology to build Fin. And so I run a machine learning team in Intercom. We sit alongside a large number of product teams. We are sort of technical machine learning product development specialists. And our world and the company's world changed on the 30th of November when ChatGPT came out. A lot of people in the company Intercom were up late on Slack playing with ChatGPT going, oh my goodness, this has really changed customer support. That change hasn't happened yet, but it's going to. We've been spending years building bots. The bots are pretty good when you ask them specific questions that someone has manually set up an answer to, but this thing can just dialogue with you. What do we do? And so the first thing we did was we set out to build extremely fast, simple features, an extremely fast product development cycle to just build some very simple features to get this power of ChatGPT into our customers' hands. And so we focused on the inbox. We built features in the Intercom inbox for our support reps to help them summarize a conversation. Summarizing a conversation is kind of an interpretative task, right? It's you've got this big set of customer support conversation, you're trying to make it smaller, you're trying to summarize it, you're trying to take data that's there and compress it down. And so we kind of had a good enough mental model of the system that we're hey, summarization will probably work pretty well. Edit tone of voice will probably work pretty well. So we built these kind of simple exploratory features quite quickly to kind of do things like have a support rep be able to edit the tone of voice of something before it sends it to an end user. Or to write a shorthand and then try and expand that shorthand out. We built this quite quickly. Started on kind of the 5th of December, 20th of December we had prototypes used by the Intercom customer support team over the holiday break. The 13th of January we launched the customer beta with fewer than 10 customers. The 31st of January, we did a launch with testimonials from those customers based on several weeks of actual real use. And by March, we had these features live, these inbox features live with thousands of customers. In parallel with that, we kind of realized, we were like, oh, this is going to hallucinate too much. I don't know if we can build something to help end users directly, an end user question answering bot with this. We were like unsure about that. But in sort of like by like the end of January, by February, we kind of had, one thread of work, which was like, oh, actually, we've got increasing conviction that we can build, something that will actually answer end user questions. And we got early access to OpenAI's GPT-4 around then. And in our early prototypes, we were like, wow, GPT-4 can be told to hallucinate, told to make things up even less than like the previous generation of models. And so we were like, wow, we think we can build something here that's actually a really, a next generation bot that doesn't just augment human support reps, but actually directly answers end user questions. So we came up with some design goals. What did we want this next generation bot to do? We wanted it to converse naturally. We wanted it to be able to kind of like converse in that amazing natural way that ChatGPT does. But unlike ChatGPT, we wanted to constrain it to answer questions about just your business. We wanted to reduce hallucinations a lot. We wanted it to, have minimal configuration. Intercom had built customer support bots for years, but our customers really struggled to like activate. They really struggled, even though we thought it was worth their while and we spent a long time sweating the design of it. It's just this, people just don't have time. Like that initial usage friction of like, you have to set the bot up. If you wanted to answer 100 different questions, you got to do a little bit of work. You got to do maybe 10 minutes of work to teach it each one of those questions. People just didn't do that enough. That activation friction was just a killer. And I actually think one of the most exciting things about AI is its ability to reduce kind of first use and activation friction is huge. It won't be perfect out of the box, but it'll get you to the 80-20 part of value extremely fast. I think that's very exciting. Okay, so how do we build with AI? That's what we set out to build with Finn. How do we actually work with this? Well, Intercom has got all these general product principles that run right across R&D. Start with the problem, think big, start small, ship fast, deliver outcomes. It really sweats starting with the customer problem. But sometimes with AI, you've got to work backwards from the technology instead, which is anathema to a lot of what we've learned as good product practice over the last decade, where we've had maybe somewhat static technology, since mobile. And I actually think like a skunkworks style approach like works well with this. My team often starts with technology and reduces technology risk initially, and then partners with product teams in the wider organization to try and like, okay, now that we've reduced the technology risk, what can we build in terms of product? It works well for us. We have a senior team of ML folk. We tend to own this sort of technical core with engineers and scientists that kind of help establish a wide design envelope that then we can work with designers and product experts. Now that we've defined the outsides of that envelope, what's the best product to build within that envelope? And they have more expertise on that. I think, the ML team needs to have quantitative skills. You need to be looking at data. These systems in production, they do surprising things you didn't see in training. And, because every customer's data is different, you need to be able to monitor and to quantitatively use data science or analytics or whatever you want to call it to kind of monitor these systems in production. And I'm a strong believer that if you have an ML team, they need the ability to ship code. It's not, they need to be kind of a skunkworks team maybe, but they need the ability to ship code to product autonomously. We really believe in fast customer contact. I almost think that the biggest predictor of success for an ML product is how fast it ships to customers, how fast it ships anything to customers, even something with no machine learning. I think that, we're going to see a lot of people where in the past, if you wanted to build an AI product or a machine learning product, it was really expensive. Now you can use OpenAI's APIs to build a version 1 like way quicker. And maybe it won't be cost effective in production, or maybe it'll be rough around the edges, but where it used to take machine learning experts ages to build a V1, now you can maybe do it quite quickly, like in a matter of weeks. I think that's going to be very exciting over time. test your real data as soon as possible. These systems will do surprising things when you put real data into them. You want to front load that. And a huge part of design for this is like, how do you design a system that is graceful under failure conditions? It's not about like, what does a perfect design look like? It's like, what do I have to do to compromise the design to make a system that will tolerate failure in the AI component or the ML component? And an example of this, one of my favorite examples of this is something we see every day, which is the predictive text keyboard on your mobile phone. Like, it's doing prediction. There is a little bit of AI or machine learning in there, but it's been beautifully designed so that when it gives you a suggestion that's irrelevant, which it does a lot, you can ignore it. But if it gives you a suggestion that's relevant and useful, your eye is sort of like drawn to it. So it's quite a nice synthesis between design, machine learning, and the human attention system there. And like I mentioned, how we build AI how we build machine learning has changed. And people say, oh, large language models aren't all of AI. There's all this other AI stuff we've been doing for years. But to a first approximation, they kind of are. They're like completely changing AI, completely changing machine learning. So yeah, we shipped Fin. We started building it at the end of January. And then we shipped a demo. We really wanted to ship an online demo for people to actually interact with to build credibility. We shipped that on around the 14th of March. And then after that, we moved into like full production at Intercom, probably had 100 people working on this, and shipped like a full featured product generally available at the start of June. And the current state, like there's always this diffusion of innovations kind of adoption curve. We're probably in early adopters still, or maybe starting to enter an early majority. I would describe it as good adoption. We're working on a V2. I can't share numbers, but like, think millions of dollars of ARR rather than thousands. And we're working on future versions of Fin. CS, customer support, I think is going to be hugely changed by AI. If I have to guess what's next, I think there's going to continue to be breakneck progress in the underlying technology. It's going to change what we can do. I think you're going to get smaller machine learning models that you can run in your own cloud system or your developers can run. I think they're a little bit overhyped today, but I think they're exciting. I think it's going to come more and more. We're all going to have to learn how we productize these systems. They're not going to go away. I think there's going to be continuing progress as well with like large models. I think you're going to see a GPT-5 or competitors at some point, and they're going to continue getting pretty amazing. Okay, thank you very much. I think we've got maybe about 7 minutes for questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Fergal. I'll go over to the side. So I suppose the most important question is, where did you come up with, how did you get the name Fin?
Fin. So a team that I was not on came up with the name Fin, and I think it's a reference to a lot of things. It's a short name, it's phonetic, it's easy to spell. There's a little bit of like, it's a friendly name, maybe there's a bit of fact it's an Irish name. I think the salmon of knowledge probably like, came up somewhere. So yeah, probably.
No, that works. And I just had one other question as well. And how do you measure the success and the effectiveness of Fin in addressing those support questions as they are now?
Yeah. Great question. How do you measure success? Look, so we are in the happy position that we've had like bots live in production for years, and we have well-established success metric loops. So when Fin gives an answer, there's these little buttons that pop up at the end of the answer where you can say, that helped, in which case your kind of conversation will end, or you can say like, wait for the team, in which case another button which dismisses the bot and kind of says, look, you need more help from a human. And so what we do is we gather this telemetry from across our customer base, and we use that to make sure that like, hey, this is actually moving the needle, this is actually working. And one thing we did that I think is pretty dramatic is we bill on a resolution. We bill you $1 when it has successfully closed a conversation, and when the user hasn't kind of escalated to get more help from a team. So, we deliberately set ourselves up an incentive that's hopefully customer aligned and end user aligned too. So, yeah.
Did ever anything unusual come from that? Was there anything that stood out from that?
I mean, a lot of unusual stuff happens. This is there's a lot of ways of breaking your experience, of accidentally building deflection, something that gets in people's ways, and so we've all sorts of like guardrails and checks on that. So yeah, we see unusual things there frequently, yeah.
Great, so we'll get to the audience questions, I should say. Did any of your customers have any concerns on OpenAI having access to customer data? And do you have to train models with customer data?
Yeah, so two questions. I'm going to take the second one first.
Okay.
So as we use Fin today, we use kind of like the static OpenAI models. And so we're kind of like, we're taking your data when an end user kind of asks a question, we kind of take that, we use an old school neural network to like search your knowledge base to shortlist relevant pieces of content. Then we send them with the question to GPT-4 to try and get it to answer. And so like, we're not training models with customer data, certainly not at the moment. We'd have to look at our terms and conditions to do that. Did any of our customers have concerns on OpenAI having access to customer data? Yeah, they do, because you have to send the customer question in some sort of summarized form to OpenAI to make the system work. And right now, that's a trade-off that you have to be willing to accept. OpenAI give us pretty good terms. They don't like retain the data. They promise they don't use the data for training. We have an enterprise agreement with them with quite favorable terms. So I don't think I will be worried about it. If you need your data to not leave the EU, then you can't use it at the moment because we only have using OpenAI's US servers. However, we'll probably move on from that soon. It's becoming available globally.
Okay. And so can you tell us how was the usability testing process used to validate Fin?
So, there's a lot in there. So one thing we do is, gather like telemetry and metrics at scale, right? So that's like a quantitative process. Others, like, we have a research team, a pretty well-developed research team in Intercom that actually, sat down customers and asked customers what they thought of like Fin working on different conversations. And we also did usability testing with end users. So like, there's a lot in there, and there's a big iterative flywheel that works there. Identifying problems, which we then try and fix either at the product end or at the ML end. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good.
Okay. And bad Fin. What was the biggest complaint customers have with Fin?
Good question. There's a few different ones. A lot of customers initially balked at the price. $1. We were initially maybe $2 or something. That's mostly driven by computation. These large language models are very expensive to run at the moment. If you want to build per resolution, that's mostly gone away at the $1 price point, and that people realize what's driving it. A lot of customers also are unhappy with like what we call like answer quality because it's imperfect. Overall, customers love it, but there's definitely a strand of feedback where people's expectations are, hey, that this should be perfect. It's still not perfect. It's a lot closer to perfect than it was 2 years ago, but it's still imperfect. So, if you are, in a regulated domain, it may not be suitable for you to deploy this technology at the moment. If you're like, an entertainment or B2B SaaS or something like that, it probably is. So, customers will have to make that decision. Can you tolerate occasional error, or is your tolerance for error zero? That's something people...
And that one, I suppose, leads into the other one here. Can you tell us from your user research how comfortable and trusting are your customers using AI?
Look, it varies, but people are getting increasingly comfortable with this. And also, we've done a lot of work with Fin to put guardrails around it and reduce that discomfort. So, this is something we're all learning about, but I think, it's still going, Yep.
Yeah. And can we be sure it can reason? These models assume a computational model of cognition, which is only one perspective. Should we create a GPT? Should we care if GPT can reason or if it can simply appear to be reasoning? Yeah, I mean,
it's interesting. I guess it's sort of a philosophical question there. Yeah, if you think that, it's not what the question's saying, but if you were to say, only entities with souls can reason, right? If you were to take a position like that, then, you'd be like, well, it can't reason. So there is a computational model of cognition here. There is something where it's like, something that does enough compute can reason. You kind of get into a definition of reasoning. No, it's very hard to be sure of anything with these models. I would say I have a position which is that what they're doing is indistinguishable from reasoning to me. And so I would say at a functional level, I'd say it can reason. But I think the jury is still out in terms of the philosophical or psychological aspects of what's going on here.
Okay, and how do customers react when they know they are talking to an AI bot, similar to chatbots?
Yeah, good question. Overall, similar to chatbots, but I think end user expectations are changing. I think ChatGPT is changing expectations. 2 years ago, as soon as people realized it was a bot, they fell, or a subset of users, but a large subset of users fell into a search-oriented paradigm. They started to just really start writing search queries, so like small, like you use Google, small, short, keyword-based queries. People don't do that with Fin so much, maybe because it starts dialoguing with them in a way that seems more natural, and so that changes user expectation. Or maybe it's because ChatGPT has changed user expectations generally. I don't think we know, but I definitely do think that we're seeing a difference in terms of the affordances, and we're seeing a difference in terms of what end users expect, driven by ChatGPT and driven by the deployment of bots like Fin. Yeah.
Okay, and then someone was asking, do you do any localization, market testing, or research on the name Fin?
So that is outside my department. We have a lot of great people who work in product marketing. How much market testing or research they did on the name Fin, I don't know. I'm sure they did some. On the other hand, we were moving very quickly here, and so we thought time to market was critical. We thought that hey, we really wanted to get this stuff live quickly, learn fast. We thought AI was going to disrupt our space. We wanted to be ahead of that. And so, so right across the entire product development cycle, we made intuitive calls. And so I don't know exactly how tested that would be. I'm sure they did some. I don't actually know the details on that.
Well, it's a cool name in my mind anyway. So what's your best prediction where LLM will be in 2 years' time?
I don't know. I think things are going to get pretty crazy, frankly. I think that there's different theses. I think that as people continue to dump huge amounts of computation at these, they will continue to change qualitatively and quantitatively. There is an opposing thesis, which is hey, the sort of current architectures and current data sets maybe are reaching some sort of plateau, and maybe progress will slow down. I definitely know that the amount of money flowing into this space is insane. The amount of training, GPUs being used for training, everything we're seeing is, strategic investment everywhere is just absolutely huge. And so I don't think we know. I think that, my best prediction in 2 years is starting to get difficult to tell apart from human level cognition across many, many, many tasks. That would be my best point prediction. But nobody knows. Will they continue to advance, and how far they'll continue to advance with scale, we don't know. I'm definitely a maximalist. I definitely think they can go absolutely crazy places with continued compute.
Are you a little excited or a little scared or a little both?
Both, yeah, both. I'm very excited for AI as it approaches human level intelligence from a product development perspective. As a human, it's a huge if it starts to exceed that, if we don't hit some scaling thing, I think we need to talk about regulation and all those things, and people are starting to talk about those things.
Yeah. I welcome our overlords, but can I point Fin to a selected database to make it safe to use in healthcare?
So Fin only works with the data that's in your database, right? So you can definitely point it to a database. To make it safe to use in healthcare, that gets blurry. I would say you need to do your own testing and evaluation there. I can't guarantee that it'll never misinterpret something. Now look, if you have a human support rep, I also can't guarantee they'll never misinterpret something that's in your knowledge base. Humans are still a little bit better at knowing what they don't know than these systems are. I wouldn't deploy it in a healthcare setting for anything like life critical or anything like this. I wouldn't deploy any current generation AI. But I live in a country that has a first world kind of healthcare system. All these things are trade-offs, and they depend on your domain. If you were a customer in a less developed country and there was no access to healthcare professionals, I don't know. Talking about generative AI generally, we'd recommend not deploying Fin for healthcare settings at the moment generally.
Okay. And can you tell us from your user research how comfortable and trusting your customers are using AI?
Again, it varies. There's a spectrum out there. Some people should be legitimately slower adopters of this because maybe they're in healthcare, maybe they're in like some extremely critical finance application. Other customers should probably adopt much more optimistically. It depends on your current customer support team. You know, if you're outsourcing your customer support at the moment, so it depends on many variables. And you know, I wish I could give like a single answer, but this is new technology. It's a new product. I definitely think Fin is human competitive in many domains. Yeah.
Okay. And has Fin reduced numbers to real agents?
Fin has absolutely reduced the volume of support queries that reach real agents, human agents. Fin has absolutely, like, you know, Resolution Bot, our previous product, also did this, but you had to configure it. Fin will frequently get like good performance. You know, maybe it'll like knock 25% off your inbound customer support volume, literally within a couple of days of setting it up. You know, and where it's legitimately answering questions that previously humans had to answer and successfully answering them. It depends on the business. It depends on how much is in your help center, how much is in your knowledge base. But yeah, it's definitely working probably better than we expected, better than I would have expected, yeah.
Okay, great. Listen, thanks to Fin and thanks to yourself, Fergal. These people need coffee. It's 11 o'clock, so please a warm round of applause for Fergal.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, Fergal.